Could you please put on priorities a few things like God, family, prayer life, maybe secular world, and reading books? What's your priorities in your life?
Well, emotionally, and my primary moral responsibility, of course, is before God, to be the person in my inner man that He wants me to be. Because from that, everything else flows. If I lose that communion with Him, that communication with Him, that discipline with Him, then everything else collapses. So my primary responsibility before God is to walk closely with Him and honor Him in my life. That includes my prayer life, my study life, my preparation, my habits, my thought, all of that. But then immediately the first responsibility that comes is for my family. You know, they are my trust. That's my wife, and I have 3 children and 3 grandchildren, that I will honor them with my vows, my wife with my vows, and honor my children with my paternal care for them. You know, children never grow too old and never stop needing you. They still need affirmation. It's interesting, my daughter, who has 2 children of her own and expecting one, this morning when I woke up at 5, she had 3 pictures of her children, and she said, "Dad, where are you?" You know, I see that so often on my phone, "Where are you?" You know, and I told her that I was winding down the last day here and so on and heading back home tomorrow. So my family comes next. But then I have a responsibility to my calling, my colleagues. They are really not those who work for me. They are those who work with me. I have to honor and respect them. They give up their own time to serve alongside my calling. So I love and respect my colleagues. I see them as an asset, not as a cost or as a liability. My board, those who support me and pay the bills. When I started this ministry, the man who first gave me the check to get it going, I said, "What do you want from me?" He said, "Just one thing." I thought, well, what's he going to ask for? I thought he was going to ask for reporting and all of that. He said, "I just want you to promise me your integrity." He said, "As long as you promise me that, that's all I need to know." Basically, he was asking for everything, you know. So that's about the order. You know, it's commonsensical. You have to walk before God. You have to provide for your family. You honor those you work with and those who pay your bills.
Yeah. Now you have such a big ministry with a lot of people inside that. But do you remember the very first point when your relationship with God started?
Yeah, actually, as ministries go, it's not very big. I always say we are kind of a guppy in an ocean of whales. You know, we're a small ministry, but we're 30-year-old in the ministry. They use a phrase back home, get the biggest bang for the buck. You know, I think this ministry does a lot with what it has. We have about 130, 140 globally. We have about 55 or 60 back in our Atlanta office. We're based in 11 countries. We are on 2,000 stations every week and plus and so on. So there's a responsibility. But do I go back to the earlier days and what the initial start was? Yeah, I think, thank God He didn't show me where we were headed, because I would have run in the opposite direction. I did not like responsibility. I do not like the size of this ministry. I still shy away from it. I keep passing it on to the younger ones. I'm just a writer and a speaker, and even that sometimes I wonder about. So that's all I can do under God. The administration of this is done by others. So in the early days, I remember the first day this ministry was going to be launched. I went back home after meeting the gentleman who was going to fund everything, and I was in my home in New York. I was a professor at that time. I sat in our small kitchen table. My wife was sitting opposite me. I had a cup of coffee in my hand. I couldn't even lift it up. I said, "What have I done?" I resigned my professorship. I was the chairman of the department. I've got 3 children, and I'm going out not knowing where my paychecks are going to be coming from. What have I done? So I think that sudden shock hit me. And now as I look back, I know I didn't do anything. I just trusted Him. He's done everything.
What's for you, what prayer means for you personally, like for the man and like for the minister?
Prayer is, you know, if you're a praying Christian, your faith in God will carry you. If you're not praying or not a praying Christian, you will have to carry your faith and you will get exhausted. So a praying Christian is carried by God. A non-praying Christian, one who claims to be a Christian, doesn't pray. They carry their faith and they'll get weary and get exhausted. So prayer means to me, I am carried by him. And that's what I think is very critical.
How do you usually spend your time with God? Reading Bible, praying, maybe something else?
You know, when I was a youngster, I went to an Anglican church and I had no interest. I'd look at people kneeling and saying, it's all nonsense. That's the way I used to look at it. It's all nonsense. I would see them going up for communion and say, what are they doing? I'd look at the prayer book and I started to memorize most of it because I wanted to time it to see how quickly it would all end, And then when I found Christ, everything changed. And I went and bought an Anglican prayer book. And I said, this is what you used to pray? And how did I not listen to this? How did I not see the beauty of these prayers, the theological depth of these prayers? And so on my 50th birthday, my wife said to me, what would you like? I said, I don't want anything. She said, no. If you had one thing you could have, what would it be? I said, you know what I would love to have? An old Anglican prayer bench. Just to be able to ask God to forgive me for all those years I never knelt. And she found one. And it's in my study in Atlanta. And that prayer bench is there. It has a hymn book on it. It has a Bible on it. And I'm on that prayer bench every morning when I'm home. And I love the idea of kneeling before my Heavenly Father. And so I first read a book of Christian essays by my favorite author, F.W. Borum. I use that to wake me up. If I go straight to the Bible, I'm half asleep, Wake up. Then I read the Word, I'm wide awake, and then I'm on my knees. I want to be wide awake when I'm communing with God. So that's my pattern, yeah.
Super. You travel a lot, very a lot, and how do you keep yourself pure? Because you mentioned today during the session about a problem with pornography and all that kind of stuff. So it mentioned that